Okay, so let's continue on our discussion of the novel by looking at chapter 7. And in this chapter, we have Hada being released from the hospital after being treated for smoke inhalation. Um, he accidentally lit his house on fire, and that was the result. So he's released, and both Liv Crawford, his real estate agent, and Rennie Banerjee, his friend and former colleague, sort of help him during his release, and they take him home and make sure he's all right and uh, all that kind of stuff. They do have an interesting conversation about Bedley Run, so the town in which they live, where they sort of talk about the kind of hidden underbelly of the city and how perhaps it's not as sort of welcoming to those of, either immigrants or people of color. So Hada and Rennie Banjari sort of both acknowledge that they don't always feel as welcome as they could by other people who live in the town, and they're often sort of viewed as outsiders or interlopers based on the color of their skin. So there is this implicit or ingrained kind of racism that's part of Bedley Run that sort of goes unacknowledged, but it's sort of the undercurrent of this town as well. In this chapter, we also see some examples of symbolism in the novel. So we have the element of swimming and how that relates to memory. And we'll also be introduced to this motif or symbol of the black flag, and that'll become important part of Hada's experience, his interactions with the comfort women, and it's a kind of remnant or reminder of his past that he holds on to, and Sunny will discover that when she is a young girl, ask her father about the black flag that was tattered black flag in his closet. So that is where we're at in terms of the events of this chapter. So let's go a little bit more in detail and look at some of the important elements that are dealt with in chapter 7. So the sort of symbolic element of swimming is reinforced in this chapter, where we have Hada sort of, he's been released from the hospital, and once he's sort of left on his own, he goes and takes a swim in his pool. And it seems as if for him, swimming sort of almost transports him in terms of his sort of mental journey back in time. So for him, sort of swimming causes him to sort of recall or relive certain events or memories come back to the surface. So the water sort of becomes a kind of a means for him to, or for the past to resurface, and he's sort of connected through his mind into the memories that he sort of once repressed of the war. So while he's swimming, he thinks back to the shores when he was stationed in Singapore and Rangoon, when he used to swim in the warm water. And so page 143, 144, this is his sort of flashback to a time when, he just remembers swimming along the shores and then listening for the young women who didn't even speak the language, but these would have been, the comfort women who were forced into sexual slavery. And he hears, the men, drinking and carousing and having a good time. And then the women, they might put on either a sort of form of flattery to the men, or they might just be quiet. that he talks about on page 144. He says, "As I swam, I sometimes listened for the other ones, those girls who didn't make much noise or speech, wondering at their quiescence as they lay beneath the palms of the shore, the snorting and grunting of men skipping out over the surface of the water in soft reports." So these, what he calls fallen women, you know, they're always sort of connected with his past, and they've sort of been stuck in his memories of the war and swimming at that time. So it's sort of like his own kind of inner journey that he goes on when he swims. And this is also again reiterated at the end of this chapter, so page 152. And he talks about the pool. So he says on page 151, "The water in mine appears nearly lightless, whether in bright sun or dusk, and the feeling sometimes is that you are not swimming in water at all, in something material and true, but rather pulling yourself blindly through a mysterious resistance, whose properties are slowly revealing themselves to you, in flame-like royals and tendrils, the black fires of the past." So very sort of poetic language there, the imagery of sort of black fires of the past. So it sort of gives us the connotation that, you know, as he's swimming, he's also transported back in time into his past. And it seems as if, you know, for Hatta, the past is never completely, he doesn't have full closure of it. So this is why the past keeps sort of haunting him. And in a way, this enacts, you know, the Freudian concept of, you know, return of the repressed, where, you know, the past will continue to haunt you. You'll keep returning to those moments that haunt you until you have sort of full closure, or feel yourself that you've made sense of that experience. So we have had a sort of returning to the past, to his memories, because there's something in his past that he's not fully resolved about. So he has no sense of resolution or closure in regards to what happened to him during that time. And we also have a connection drawn together with Sunny's character in relation to these so-called fallen women, the comfort women of his past. He draws together Sunny's experience of hanging around with, you know, Jimmy Gizzy and Lincoln, and hanging out at that house where they're doing drugs and where there's, you know, a lot of sexual activity. So he sees Sunny as also almost repeating the past, in the sense that she is behaving in a way that he deems unacceptable or inappropriate, and he's seeing her as a kind of fallen woman in terms of her morality, her sense of purity, her sexual purity or chastity, that he sort of, as a father, wants her to preserve, yet she is, you know, much more experimenting with her sexuality and more free and willful in terms of expressing herself. So another symbolic element that's introduced in chapter 7 is the black flag, and this is brought up for the first time by Sunny when she at this point, this is when she's a teenager. She's been spending time at the Gizzy house, but there's been some trouble there. Her boyfriend, Lincoln, has been accused of stabbing Jimmy Gizzy, and he's fled from the town, and she's back at home for this moment. And her father is sort of admonishing her, saying, you know, warning her and punishing her, saying, you know, you got to watch out. Women who stray often end up, you know, abused and exploited. So he's warning her about what can happen to young women who are too sexual or who are too willful, have a strong sense of will, so just a sense of self, and stray from the security of their families. So he's telling them that, you know, often society will exploit and abuse these women. And then she is, she sort of stands up for herself, and then she actually brings up the fact that she found this black flag, or this scarf, in her father's closet at one point. So on page 147, she says, I snooped one day, that's all. I opened up one of them, and there was a piece of cloth folded inside. A piece of cloth, I think it was silk. It felt like it. It was shiny and a little tattered, I think. I thought it was someone's, or used to be, like a woman's scarf, though it was completely black. It wasn't, I snapped at her, annoyed by the picture of her going through my things. I don't know where you learned to do things like that. And then he explains, it wasn't a scarf, it was a flag from the war. So this black flag will become more important as the story goes on. But obviously it's a remnant, a reminder of something that happened in Hatta's past. Its tattered appearance suggests that, you know, it's something broken or fragmented or falling apart or destroyed. It comes from the war, so his military service. And if we think about what a black flag stands for, you can connote, it could connote, you know, death, the coming of death, so the impending doom. So black flag meaning the bringer of death. It could be a sign of anarchy. I know anarchist groups sometimes sort of show a black flag. So it could be a symbol of maybe rebellion or anti-authority, anti-hierarchy. It could just be a symbol of, you know, death again, or bringer of sickness, like the plague. And it turns out, we don't touch on this yet, but Kira Hatta, Franklin Hatta's Japanese name will actually translate to black flag, but we don't learn that yet, but that'll be a sort of an important part of the symbol. So Hatta will sort of, the symbol will become part of his sense of self, his identity, and it relates to his past. It's something that, you know, it's in the back of his closet, tucked away, but he hasn't yet, you know, thrown it away or something like that. So it sort of suggests, you know, it's almost like the back of his mind, the recesses of his mind. There's memories there that are that he doesn't talk about, that, you know, influence his character, but he never really talks about it too much, and he doesn't really tell Sonny, you know, what the truth of that remnant, what that is. What it meant to him. So it's sort of these walls that Hatta puts up that prevent him sort of from being an open and affectionate or loving father completely. At this point, Sonny also admits that during the time that she stayed at Jimmy Gizzy's house, she suffered kind of sexual trauma, which resulted in violent stabbing. So it turns out that Jimmy Gizzy tried to hurt her, assault her, held her down, and this happens on page 150, where she talks about this experience. She says, I woke up and he was holding down my arms. And then her father says, what are you saying? You didn't say anything to the police. There was no mention of anything like this. And she answers, why would I bother? She rasps. Your cop friends all think I'm a whore, and they do anything to get their hands on Lincoln. They don't want to hear that he was helping me. Did he hurt you? I asked. I'll alert Officer Como if this is true. And Sonny says, I don't want to talk about it anymore, she said, picking up the laundry basket. It's over. Nothing like that is ever going to happen to me again. I'll kill myself before it does, I swear.